What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Today we're making what I'm calling Korean barbecue mac and cheese. I'm going to show you my streamlined take on bulgogi beef and combine it with the world's greatest stovetop mac and cheese recipe to make something that I think is really special. So diving right into it here, the first thing I'm working on is the beef so I can get it marinating. This is just shy of 1 pound of boneless ribeye that I put in the freezer for about 30 minutes just to make it easier to cut up. For my purposes today, I don't think I want huge chunks of fat, so I am going to remove most of those. The intramuscular fat on this should be plenty to keep things moist and flavorful. The normal form factor for bulgogi beef would be super thin strips, but for what I'm doing today, I think little 1/2 to 1 inch chunks will make more sense once they're tossed with the mac and cheese later. So once that's all cut up, it's time to build the marinade. That's going to start with 5 cloves of garlic and a roughly equal quantity of ginger. I'm also going to need some onion. This one here is pretty giant, so I think I'll just use 1/4 of it today. With all that peeled and prepped, it's time to grate it all. I'll start by doing the garlic and ginger on the microplane. I find this to be the easiest way to turn them into a paste, which will disperse way easier in the marinade than if I just finely chopped it. Once those are done, I'll throw it all into this little bowl and then onto the onion. This I'll just grate on the large holes of a box grater. That'll be plenty fine. That goes into the bowl with the ginger and garlic, and then I'll add about 1/4 cup of soy sauce, a tablespoon of sesame oil, and then some black pepper. I'm also going to add a pinch of salt directly to the meat. I just find it easier for me to visually gauge how much salt I need if I do it this way, as opposed to putting it in the marinade. Go easy though, the soy sauce will do most of the heavy lifting in terms of sodium content, so just a pinch will do. So now with that stirred up, I'm gonna put about half of it into the bowl with the meat and give that a good massage. You can be pretty rough with it here to kind of mechanically tenderize the meat. If you use ribeye like me, you probably don't need to worry about it too much, but it can make a real difference if you're using a tougher cut. So with that marinating now, I wanna turn this reserved bit here into a glaze for later. To do that, I'm gonna add roughly 1 tablespoon each of sugar, miso paste, and gochujang, and then I'll add the white and light green parts of a couple scallions. The tops I'll save for later. And that's gonna be it for the glaze. This will go really great on the ribeye later, but also makes for a pretty awesome all-purpose condiment. This stuff rules. So now, I'll get my cast iron skillet over high heat. I'm gonna go ahead and cook the meat now since I'm ready to eat, but you could absolutely opt for a longer marination period if you want. Once it's hot, I'll throw the meat in and try to spread that out into as even a layer as possible. For this, I'm not trying to go for a super hard sear or anything, so the excess moisture isn't a problem for me, but if you want more brown crust on the meat, you can pat yours dry before putting it in the pan. So while that gets going, now's a good time to start the process for the macaroni and cheese. So to do it, into my pot goes about 8 ounces of macaroni. This is a 1 pound box, so I'm just eyeballing half of it. Then I'll add just enough water to cover, along with a pinch of salt. Don't salt this like you normally would for pasta because the water is going to reduce and become part of the sauce. There's no excess here, so all the salt you add will be in the food in the end. While that heats up, I'll get my cheese ready. I need 8 ounces of cheese, so equal parts to the macaroni. To make up the 8 ounces, I'll first grate 2 ounces of sharp cheddar, and then to that, I'll add 6 ounces of American. The cheddar is optional. You can use any melty cheese there you want, but the American has emulsifying salts in it that are important for achieving the right texture in the end, so don't skimp on that. Checking back in on the meat here, and it's looking like it's fully cooked and has gotten just a little bit of color on it, so I'll go ahead and add my glaze. I'm just going to add about half for now. I don't really need it to be swimming, I just want it to be able to coat every piece. So I'll let that reduce and get all sticky and crusty. Should only take a couple extra minutes. The sugar is what's really going to help this adhere to the meat. Right about there, that looks good to me, so I'll turn that off and set it aside while I finish the macaroni. Because it's in such a relatively small amount of water, make sure you stir frequently so nothing sticks. Now the only thing left to prep is some kimchi. If you want to make your own, be my guest, but home fermentation is a rabbit hole that I am simply not ready to go down, so store-bought will be just fine for me today. I'm just gonna get a few ounces and chop it up a bit. Not looking for a precision dice here, just getting it small enough so it makes sense on a fork next to the macaroni and the beef. One of the nice things about this recipe is that you really don't need to worry about how perfectly al dente the pasta is. The goal is to make a big cheesy goo, so slightly overcooked pasta is completely fine. So just cook it until most of the water has been absorbed and it looks kinda like this. And once it's here, I'll add 8 ounces of evaporated milk. That's right, it's just equal parts by weight: pasta, evaporated milk, and cheese. Along with that, I'm gonna add all of my American cheese. I'll hold off on the cheddar for now. and a couple teaspoons or so of Dijon mustard. This isn't enough to make it taste like mustard, but it plays well with the color of everything else, and a little bit of acid really helps brighten things up. I'm gonna keep stirring this now until it comes back up to a simmer and the cheese is fully melted. And I think I did actually add just a little too much water at the beginning, so I'm gonna let this reduce for a bit. It's okay though to err on the side of too loose because this is gonna get a lot thicker as it cools. I think it looks good there, so now I'm gonna turn off the heat and throw in my cheddar cheese. Once that's melted, I'll taste it for seasoning. It needs just a touch more salt, and then I'll also add some white pepper, and then I'll add my bulgogi ribeye. I was afraid of the meat muddying up the color of the mac and cheese, but the red from the gochujang really just makes the color better, which is a nice surprise. And that's it. This is ready to go. So I'm gonna get a bunch of it in my bowl, and then I'll top it with some kimchi, some of my reserved green onions from earlier, and then finally some sesame seeds. And that's what I'm calling Korean barbecue mac and cheese. It's just insanely, insanely good. It manages to capture the nostalgia of blue box stovetop mac and cheese while being super interesting and exciting. The meat is super tender and flavorful, and the spicy kimchi does a perfect job of livening things up. I really hope you give this one a try sometime, and if you do, let me know how it goes. Thanks.